Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Aborn. I'm the CEO of FreightPlus, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's webinar. The topic that we're going to be covering today is on distribution strategies for food and beverage. A lot of the conversation today is going to be specifically around cold chain. So if you're a refrigerated or a frozen potential shipper out there, a lot of the content is going to be for you. Just quickly about FreightPlus, if you're not familiar with our organization, we are a technology-enabled logistics provider. After about 30 years in the consulting space, we got into the managed logistics and brokerage space. Recently we've been on the Inc. 5000 the past 3 years. Have had a lot of success, and some of our success and really a core vertical for us is food and beverage. So, you're going to get a chance to talk to someone from our team and Brendan. And we're also joined today by Raj from Tive. Tive is a great local company here in Boston. And I'll let Raj kind of explain a little bit more about what they do. But I think the goal of today is to kind of talk about, from a strategic perspective, how do you think about planning, organizing, working with customers? How do you think about, mitigating risk within transportation, and also from a planning perspective? Brendan and Raj will talk a little bit about, under the roof, right? How to manage to dock doors, how to manage under the roof operations, and as it flows into trucks. And then we'll talk about, how to think about partnership. I think one of the themes that you'll hear today is, partner selection and partnership. So with that, I'll kick it first to Brendan and let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, super excited to be here today. I'm Brendan Lawler, Senior Director of Operations here at FreightPlus. Overall responsible for making sure our customers' freight's picked up on time, delivered on time, at a competitive price, and damage-free, which can be pretty challenging in the food and beverage space. Also came from Amazon Transportation Services, so have quite a bit of experience in under the roof operations. So, excited to go through some of that as well today.
Thanks, Brendan. Raj, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Tive?
Yeah, Steve, thanks. And thank you for having me here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Raj. I'm the Director of Food over here at Tive. Tive is a player in the visibility space. We make devices that look just like these, as well as software to help shippers, receivers, everyone in the food supply chain manage their freight from a visibility perspective, telling them where it is and the condition of it at all times to help them mitigate supply chain risk. Tive was founded back in 2015, but we've had pretty astronomical growth, working with over 1,000 brands across the globe. And as Steve mentioned, based here in Boston, where our headquarters is, and I'm the Director of Food for the team. Thank you.
Thank you. So as you can tell, a really great mix of technology partners, visibility partners, and then somebody who's kind of living it and breathing it on a day-to-day basis, working on behalf of our clients with Brendan. So I think, Brendan, you're going to be the man to kick off. Can you just? I think the first question is upstream of transportation is planning, essentially. So can you talk about strategies for planning, not only transportation but planning orders and what we see some of the best people do working with their customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think working in the food and beverage space is definitely challenging, especially on the customer side. You're going to very, very large companies like CNS, Wakefern, Amazon, et cetera. So optimizing your supply chain can be difficult. And I think really what we really harp on from a food and beverage piece is this concept of filling up full trucks, right? And filling up full trucks, it can be accomplished in a few different ways. First is really establishing hard set order patterns. So understanding when your customers need to receive their product and really planning your supply chain around that, and really being intentional about your order patterns. Not you get an order tomorrow and then you ship it the next day. Really kind of thinking holistically and getting in the data and understanding how your order patterns need to flow to really optimize your strategy. Second is really if you can't fully optimize your order patterns is looking at other options such as pool programs, right? Filling up a full truck, getting it into a pool point, and then running the final mile from there. So you can be flexible on your customer side, but also very intentional on the front end and making sure that you're filling up trucks, because that's really going to be kind of what we talk about when you're thinking about determining the right mode and providing cost savings holistically, is really getting as much product on a truck as you possibly can. And that's really by getting in the data and getting creative on your shipping patterns and your ordering patterns, and working intentionally with those end customers.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think those are important concepts in any supply chain, clearly, but especially when we start going down the cold chain path, right? Because the capacity and total available suppliers and folks that you can do business with, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later, it's a lot less, right? Especially as you start thinking about small 2, 3 pallet, 4 pallet shipments, going into those challenging deliveries and potentially long lengths of haul, right? At the end of the day, I think as supply chain leaders and business owners and business operators, we're driving towards this concept of OTIF, right? So if we want to be successful with our customers, if we want to show up well on those scorecards, I think there's good rich conversations that we both have to have with our customers, and then making sure that plan is being executed against. And
if you're a shipper really shipping 2, 3, 4, 5 pallets, LTL reefer is a really challenging space to operate in. There's a lot of really strong regional carriers in the LTL reefer market. There's not a ton of carriers that do this long haul freight. There's only a few really within the country that do that. So, getting creative and getting intentional about your order patterns, and using a full truckload refrigerated truck to ship it cross country into a pool point, and then using a strong regional LTL carrier to do that final delivery, is something that's super critical, specifically when thinking about shipping smaller quantities in a temperature controlled environment.
Yeah, and Raj, I mean, with I think you mentioned 1,000+ customers. I mean, you must see all sorts of distribution strategies and different considerations. So, from your perspective, like what do you see, and what are the best companies doing?
Yeah, I would say it really depends on the shipper. I'd say everyone is leaning towards this embracing technology mindset, given how much it can help, especially in this operating environment. For our customers in the food space, they range from CPG all the way to fresh produce, seafood, dairy, you name it. And so as far as shipping and deciding what you're going to do as far as your distribution methods, the factors to consider are the speed, size, the cost, and the risk. What you're shipping, how quickly you need it to be there, and probably where it's going. If you're shipping boxes of Oreos, your distribution strategy is going to be way different than someone shipping fresh salmon. And so for our customers, when they look at, how they're going to approach their logistics and supply chain operations, those are the things it's coming down to. All going to depend on the freshness limit as it relates to cold chain. And so for our bread and butter customers, people using this sort of technology, it's people that have high perishability. So someone shipping berries, leafy greens, chicken, you name it, where there's a lot of risk associated with moving it by whatever mode they are. And so having the sort of visibility at all times can help them mitigate whatever risk comes up as it relates to claims, rejections, and spoilage, and anything temperature abuse related throughout the supply chain journey.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but at the end of the day, when we're talking about shipping food, like that's the stuff that ends up in our bodies, right? That's the leafy greens that we're eating, the chicken that we're eating. So, I think having the right technology and audits and tracking in place, and really understanding what partners you're going to be in business with is critically important. One of the words that you mentioned is risk. So if I could kind of follow up on risk and visibility, like how do you think about, like how are some of your customers thinking about identifying risks and managing risks and making good decisions to make sure that they're making good decisions for all of the customers that they're serving?
Yeah, I would say it again comes down to technology, but also just the preparation. Depending upon what mode you're shipping, there's different sort of preparation checklists that a shipper can utilized to ensure that their product is going to be handled properly. And I know Brendan's going to go into a little bit about this, but things, the best shippers have the best pre-shipping and loading checklists, things looking at like sealing, the cooling, the stacking, evaluating the chute, all the sort of pre-cooling methods as it might relate to a perishable product. And so the best shippers are the ones that have seriously thought about that and evaluated all their plans to ensure that when they're loading the truck, they're putting it on a truck that is going to get it to the end destination in the best condition possible. Probably more broadly speaking, evaluating and ensuring that they're working with the best transportation partners, looking at historical OT freights and ensuring that they're partnering with people that have good historical trends and good proof that they're going to handle products the best as possible, and also that they have the expertise handling their specific commodities. And then again, the technology. All of our customers that are working with Tive and even some of our competitors and adjacent partners in the space like Project 44, Forkites, you name it, they've decided that technology is going to be their friend and help them serve their customers better. While technology can be changed and also, be a, sticker shock at first for a cost increase, it's meant to help people better their processes and, ultimately better serve their customers.
Yeah. And Brendan, how do you, as someone who is kind of on the day-to-day working and helping companies think about this, like how, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think Raj hit on how technology is being, increasingly utilized throughout the industry. And I think a core concept that we focus on and that I always preach is being, technology enabled, but not technology dependent, right? So, it's not enough to invest in automated tracking. It's not enough to invest in the tracking device that Raj showed earlier today. You need a full team behind that can act on it, and that's a strong logistics partner, a strong carrier that has contingency planning, that has communication protocols, that has backup equipment. If a refrigerated system goes down in transit, they're able to work to get another system in place so there is no damage. So I think when you're thinking risk holistically, it's really about having technology. If you don't have technology right now in food and beverage, you need to invest in it, and that's really critical. But making sure that you have SOPs and processes behind that allow your team to act when the technology does, pick up a signal that there is risk to your shipments.
Yeah,
and I think I was just going to comment one other thing stemming off of that. Like, to Brendan's point, the data is only as good as you use it. But I think historically speaking, supply chains have been siloed. Shippers manage their own process problems, carriers deal with their own, and receivers deal with their own. What we're seeing now is a movement towards collaboration. Everyone throughout the supply chain using the available data and the technologies downstream and upstream to better the processes across the entire ecosystem, which is allowing for better outcomes. If you can allow data to be shared and used on both sides, that should allow for stronger outcomes as opposed to just one party owning the data or using it and not giving access to the other parties. Collaboration is something we definitely, preach and see a lot with our customers who are seeing strong results.
I think one of the things that we've seen, and whether it's different software options or potentially a hardware software kind of Internet of Things product like Tive, is just I would say the complexity in stringing together not only a supply chain, but the complexity in stringing together a digital supply chain that's trackable, measurable, and you can build KPIs against, right? I think whether it's visibility, whether it's contract management, whether it's freight audit and pay, whether it's supply chain planning, like there have been a lot of great products and technologies to enter the market. But it's a big burden on shippers to try to pull all of those together in concert in a way that is reportable and measurable. So I think it's a great point. It's like, how do you need partnership in order to really pull that off, right? You need a bunch of different parties working together. So interesting stuff and tough challenges for folks that are shipping anything, but specifically cold chain. What about like visibility in transit, Brendan? I mean, how do you just, you kind of talked about blending technology and people, but like, what are some examples of kind of how you and your team are thinking about that?
Yeah. So I think everyone wants visibility now. I think it's the Amazon effect of, where is my package? And I think it's really important in food and beverage, specifically in the cold chain, when you're really need to be monitoring in real time, the temperature of your commodity. So you need to, collaborate and partner with carriers that have real-time monitoring, that have monitoring services. FreightPlus, we partner with Project 44 and MacroPoint, so we're directly pinging ELD devices in trucks or using telematics through cell phones to make sure that we're, have transparency throughout the entire transit of a shipment. And I think something that we're seeing more of, especially in the temperature controlled environment, and then even the high valued is pallet level tracking. A product like Tive, you can have that exact pallet level tracking, or a product is in the truck itself, so you can see in real time how temperatures are fluctuating, and set kind of dynamic rule sets to trigger when a temperature is falling outside that corresponding range. And then from there, it's really making sure that you have the right communication procedures in place. But without that visibility, you're going to be very, very reactive to certain instances, very reliable on drivers maintaining the appropriate checks, and going old school and calling or emailing that something's going wrong. Vice being very proactive and notifying the carrier, hey, we're seeing the temperature fluctuating here, or we're seeing that you're stuck, and enabling kind of contingency planning from there. So really, visibility allows operational teams, shippers, logistics companies really to be proactive versus reactive overall.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. The ability, and again, I just keep going back to the ability to have that almost digital twin of the supply chain in a reportable manner. I think when we were consultants, one of the things that we saw was an instance like what you're talking about. Kind of, the two things I'm thinking about are potentially litigation and regulation, right? We saw a company that we consulted on. There weren't great controls, and there wasn't great reportability around kind of that core temperature in the trailer, and it resulted in a really expensive litigation process. I think FSMA is another thing that everyone should be thinking about in terms of record keeping and generating proactive processes. So it's not only how do you manage the shipment to make sure that you have a happy customer and you can continue to grow that share, but it's like, how do you protect your business, protect the public health, and set yourself up to be successful and sustainable in the long term. If just want to kind of get into packaging a little bit, Raj, if you could talk a little bit about, we've kind of touched on visibility and certain systems, but I think like packaging and storage plays a huge piece in this. So if you could just kind of share some of your thoughts on packaging.
Yeah, a lot of our customers are always evaluating new packaging strategies. I've visited a couple air freight carriers, and the stuff they're doing on the tarmacs for those big coolers and whatnot, it's really interesting and whatnot. But as you're talking about FSMA and the sort of legislation that's coming, it's something the whole food industry is really thinking about. As you said, FSMA and all of these rulings are really about enhancing record keeping to be able to allow for faster identification in the case of outbreaks and illnesses and whatnot. And because of the sort of key critical events that they've laid out, there's several stemming all the way from farm all the way to fork. Transportation and handling is right there in the middle. And so anyone shipping a perishable product that's on the food traceability list is really thinking about the systems, the packaging, everything that they're doing to supplement what they need for these FSMA rulings coming out later in spring 2026. So it's something we're having active conversations with our customers about. While Tive doesn't necessarily make someone FSMA compliant, it certainly can help them in the process of their technology journey and upping their systems to ensure that they're prepared for these rulings coming out. So you're going to see a lot more talk about this coming into the summer and into the fall as you get closer to that 2026 date. But definitely something people are thinking about, and there's a lot of cool technologies coming out. A lot of people in the space taking this head on to be able to support shippers and receivers.
And I think packaging is, extremely, extremely important, regardless of the mode that you're shipping. If you're shipping in food and beverage, you need to be thinking critically about your packaging. I mean, spoilage, contamination, damage, a lot of those risks can be mitigated with proper packaging. Using vacuum sealed or double walled packaging is really important. Making sure that your pallets are wrapped properly, especially if you're shipping full truckload or LTL, is really critical for mitigating damage. If you're shipping temperature controlled products, you need to make sure that they have effective thermal insulation, which is readily available in our day and age. Using things such as foam insulated packaging. I think making sure your packaging and your containers are tightly sealed. One, to prevent temperature leaks is really important, and then two, to prevent contamination. So really thinking critically on making sure that you're using quality seals, that you're using things such as adhesive tape that are really specifically designed for temperature controlled shipping. And then even things like cold packs or dry ice, depending on temperature requirements, that can be really important in your packaging to maintain the appropriate temperature. So I think when you really think through all the different risks that can occur with food and beverage, packaging is extremely, extremely critical throughout the entire supply chain.
Yeah, and we do, just to kind of bring that all together, I think one thing is at FreightPlus, we do a lot of business with, both fast growing and kind of middle market types of companies. So, companies that are going into they're suppliers for the largest companies in the world. And I think, increasingly what we're seeing is with some of this regulation is just, their customers, our customers who are some of the largest companies in the world, are asking for reporting, documentation, requirements around how they're thinking about and handling these topics. So it's, I think it's not only are these, kind of best practices and way to make sure that everyone's healthy, but from a commercial perspective, it's like, I think the companies that are thinking about things like sustainability, those are the companies that these larger organizations are going to want to do business with. So it's like, not only how do I do the right thing, but how do I grow my business? How do I grow it in a way that distributes and scales effectively? And how do I put more money on my bottom line and build a sustainable company? So really important for a bunch of different reasons.
And I think, Steve, one thing that I've seen as we go out and visit shippers as we're going through onboarding and implementations, et cetera, is a lot of shippers are really thinking through, how do I change my carrier strategy? Claims is a huge issue for us. We really want to reduce the number of claims or claims percentage overall. And, carrier strategy can be a part of that. But in a lot of instances, we're going out to shippers and seeing, if you change how you're pallet wrapping or you change how you're sealing your packaging, that's going to mitigate claims a lot more than changing your holistic carrier strategy. So small tweaks in your packaging can really provide the real long-standing impact for your organization as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about claims. I think one of the places that we see as kind of an inflection point for claims is like the loading unloading process, right? So the freight stage, the freight's in good shape. The freight arrives at customer, it's not in good shape. And I think when you kind of backtrack, a lot of those issues are coming at a loading unloading, right? Raj, can you talk about like loading and unloading and what you've seen with customers, like how companies are being effective?
Yeah, I mean, definitely what happens during the transit has to do a lot with the loading piece of it. And, as we talked about earlier, the sort of pre-cooling, the sort of shipper checklist to make sure that everything with the truck is all right, from sealing to the drain holes to condition of the chute, the stacking, all of that. But also simple things is like, is the right temperature on the BOL? Like that's something we see super commonly, like a driver's handed a BOL with the wrong reefer set point, and then the reefer's at 38 when it's supposed to be at 32 continuous. And that's probably what's causing an issue as far as what's going on during the transit. A lot of what we see as far as issues, unfortunately, does come down to, human error, because it is a human setting that reefer. It is a human driving that truck and doing everything to get that product to destination. And so when we roll out some of our services around cold chain and start to interact with drivers, simple tweaks as far as reminders and whatnot, and ensuring that they've got the proper instructions are typically what can yield a better outcome. But again, that checklist and ensuring that you have a strong standard at your loading facilities for what needs to happen for that truck to leave is going to drive a better outcome, as opposed to just, loading the pallets, however, and letting them go off to Costco or Walmart or whoever. That's not going to yield you the best result. There's going to be things that come up. And again, putting a perishable product onto a truck where there's a tendency for a truck to have a malfunction, the stronger you can prepare from that checklist and also embracing the technology up front to be notified of issues if they do happen, that's going to allow you to mitigate them before they get to the destination and prevent that claim or that rejection.
Brendan, just with your, you've seen your time at Amazon, kind of what really high standards of operation looks like from under the roof. Like, what are some of your best practices as someone who's both worked at Amazon and run large teams, within a facility?
Yeah, I think if you're shipping any type of dry, it really comes down to your, dock organization, making sure that you're pre-staging your freight appropriately. You're doing those pre-trailer inspections, making sure that the trailer that's getting pulled onto your dock is food grade and it has been properly inspected. I think where I've seen a lot of the complications arise is specifically in the temperature controlled environment. And it really comes down to pre-cooling, proper stacking, and then, this concept of the quick transfer. If you have the luxury of having a pre-cooled dock, that's great. A lot of facilities, you have your cold storage space, then you have your dock, which is really room temperature, and you need to get that onto a refrigerated truck or a container. Making sure that you're inspecting the trucks as they come up, that the trailer has been pre-cooled, and that you're moving it from the cold storage facility, onto the truck. You're not letting that freight linger on your dock that's in a temperature controlled environment. You need to maintain the temperature throughout the entire life cycle. Proper stacking is really, really important when loading. Organize the shipment in a way that allows for adequate airflow within the truck or the container. Things like making sure that temperature sensitive items aren't stacked directly against walls. They're not near cooling units. That's some of the issues that we'll typically see. And then really just making sure that your dock team is well trained, that has kind of rehearsed this concept of the quick transfer. Minimizing the time spent during loading and unloading really reduces the exposure to ambient temperature. So training and rehearsing is really critical when you're thinking about transferring freight from a temperature controlled environment into a temperature controlled truck without kind of creating any risk along the way.
I would also just say, from a shipper perspective, like, if you're a shipper shipping highly delivered versus FOB, where you're in control of that freight and getting it to the end customer, like, the more data you can have to support your case, the better. Like, you may have done everything from a loading checklist. The carrier may have done an excellent job as well, but it could get directly to a store if it's a direct to store delivery, and an hourly employee might just not get to it. And your perishable product could be sitting on the dock. But we know that fault is probably still going to come back to you as the shipper. And so the more data you can have and evidence and, anything to supplement your case and support it, the better you'll be prepared for those tricky situations.
Yeah. And if you think, the data and then the operations, it just kind of strikes me. If you think about the end goal is to get it with a customer, but potentially it might go on a truck or 2 trucks or 3 trucks. It might be in your facility. It might be in a third-party facility. Like, there's a lot of different operators that have to perform well and potentially track and report well. Like, how do you, again, I think one of the things that we started with was partnership at the beginning. Like, how do you think about, how have you seen companies think about, finding the right partners and overall partnership in a very complicated system?
I think two things that we focus on for partnership are technology partners, and then determining the right technology partner based on the commodity that you're shipping. If it's very high valued, using a company like Tive is critical. If you're not going to go to the temperature monitoring devices, at least monitoring through P44, MacroPoint, et cetera, making sure that data is getting integrated into your system so that your operators have visibility rather than that data just existing. It needs to be tangible data that your operations team can act on. So really finding the right technology partner is really important. And then, the second piece is choosing the right carrier partners, right? I think food and beverage is a very niche industry. So choosing carriers that have extensive experience and proven expertise in food grade shipping or temperature controlled shipping. They understand this concept of food grade trailers. And then, you're auditing your partners. You're making sure that your carriers are training their carrier personnel in sanitary transportation practices and documenting each training session. That's something that they're required to do. And you need to be, auditing and making sure that they're staying up in regards to that, verifying their compliance and documentation with industry standards and certifications, making sure they have the hazard analysis and critical control points qualification, that they understand the components of food grade trailers, and you're auditing that they're utilizing food grade trailers, and all that documentation exists and is available, but making sure that you have the right triggers in place that you can ensure that the right partners are following the proper protocol.
Yeah, I think you're right, Brendan. I mean, for us, there is no one size fits all. Everyone's needs are different, and so take a look at yourself as a shipper and what your needs are for best serving your customers, and that's the way you should go about your evaluation as far as LSPs, technology partners, and all the like. For us, we're not a fit for everyone. Like we have a very specific. We're biased, obviously. We think everyone can use our solution, but we're not a fit for everyone. But what we've tried to do is take an approach where, and I saw a question come through about integrations, we've made our systems open. And I think that's where a lot of technology partners are going, allowing for seamless plug and play integrations, because the last thing a shipper or an LSP needs is another portal. And so being able to allow for integrations to see all the data in one place is the approach we've taken, bringing in data from P44, pushing our data in there, 4Kites or a TMS, whatever it may be. And that's leading for, automation and stronger processes from the shipper and receiver ends.
Yeah, that's huge. I just, again, to me, one of the biggest challenges that we as an industry face is just all of the different dependencies on service providers and technology partners. And so the ability to kind of look broadly and then orchestrate not only the management, but the reporting, right? Like how it's really difficult, and it takes a lot of different work. We can open it up to questions. I'll kind of do a quick recap, and if folks have questions, they can put them right in the chat. But I think and I'll Brendan and Rajah, I'll let you kind of close with any final thoughts that you have. But what I've heard from listening to you two has been, really it starts. It's physical and it's digital. It starts pre-order, not only with working effectively with your customers, but finding partners, whether it's distribution, whether it's transportation, trucking partners, technology providers that are going to serve kind of your business needs. It's about being, really proactive towards training. It's about spot checking and auditing where you have those partners, right? Like getting into the details. With everything from, are they following the process? Do they have the right contractual language, right? Are there gaps in process? Are there gaps in contracts? Are there gaps in technology? Are there gaps in the management and the reporting of it? To FSMA, right? I think some of the regulation and the regulatory burden that's coming down on some of these suppliers. So it's really about from pre-order through to delivery to product. Like, how do we make sure we have the right people, process, and technology? Raj, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts as we conclude here?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the call, technology should be a friend to anyone in supply chain. Like, yes, there's cost implications, but at the end of the day, technology should be a friend and a tool to save on costs in the long run and make your team more efficient and your customers happier. As in the fresh supply chain side of things, as a farmer, inputs and supply chain costs are as high as they've ever been. And so putting a load of pork, lettuce, grapes on a truck and ending up losing that to sort of cold chain abuse, like that's not a risk anyone should run. And so operating without visibility is quickly not becoming a nice to have, but a must have. And there's amazing partners out there in the space that are helping people see results. So look at technology as a friend, and use it to drive stronger outcomes for your business and your customers.
Perfect. Love it. Brendan, anything from you closing up?
Yeah, and I think obviously we brought Raj on here. At FreightPlus, we believe very strongly in technology. I think my final point is it's not enough to just invest in the technology. You need to put processes around, and you need to have a team, dedicated to supporting that technology. You need to be technology enabled, but you can't just be, technology dependent. It's not enough to just have Tive or have P44 or have MacroPoint. You need a team behind that data and acting on that data when things do go wrong, because they will always go wrong in the supply chain. So making sure that you're not only investing in technology, but you're investing in people and process as well, to really mitigate risk throughout your entire supply chain.
Perfect. I think these are the conversations, whether it's tracking and reporting, that we love to have all day. So if you're on the call, on the webinar, and you're interested in talking, to either FreightPlus or Tive, we'd love to continue discussions. We're just going to flash contact information. So first we'll start with myself. You can reach me on email, also available on LinkedIn. We'll flash Brendan. Again, there's Brendan's email. Both of us are available on LinkedIn, and Raj. Perfect. Well, thank you both. It was fun talking distribution and food and logistics and cold chain. I hope the audience had learned something. I know I did. And with that, we will close. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.